Hello everybody, Maven here, and today I bring you the SUNBRACERS Perfected build. It is finally that time that the stars have aligned and we have this exotic fully figured out with a cameo of a little bit of a bug, or a hidden technicality, whatever you want to call it. We'll talk about it later in the video. Now, SUNBRACERS have always been a niche exotic that have never really seen any use in higher level content, but I'm going to show you this clip here in a moment that I did in a Legend Lost sector, and it indeed slaps, and could slap in Master content as well. Not too sure about Grandmaster because that's not out yet, but we'll see when the time comes. So take a look at this clip and stay tuned for the complete build breakdown as well as the hidden bug. Hope you enjoy. So as you can see, the build holds up in legend level content. And now with that, let's break down the build. Now the first thing I gotta say, and I can't stress this enough, is that the most important aspect of a good PvE build is survivability. Survivability is key nowadays, and for Solar, that is in the form of restoration. You might have noticed in the intro clip that I had a restoration ×2 buff that lasted the entire encounter because I kept refreshing it via Ember of Empyrean. So you're basically immortal up to legend level content. But the more intellectual Destiny 2 players out there might be wondering how I got Restoration ×2, because Phoenix Dive applies Cure, Heat Rises applies Cure, picking up a well and proccing Well of Life triggers Healing, and obviously we're not using healing nades. So how did I get Restoration? So this is where that hidden bug and or hidden technicality comes into play. So this is what happens, and I don't know why this happens, but when Heat Rises is active, when you Phoenix Dive, you get a Restoration ×2 buff for like a very short window, like 1.5 seconds. Why does this happen? I do not know. But you have this very small time frame to proc Ember of Empyrean, so you have to get a solar ability kill or a solar weapon kill, and that is going to extend the duration of restoration. You got to keep extending it more and more and more until you're up to 12 seconds, and it stays at 12 seconds for the entire encounter, so long as you keep getting solar weapon or solar ability final blows. So here's how I sequence things. I start by proccing Heat Rises, and then I kill an enemy of Celestial Fire to proc SUNBRACERS, and then I throw a nade near an ad, and then I Phoenix Dive down onto the ad's head to kill it with the Phoenix Dive ability, and that will sure give you around 4 or 5 seconds of restoration ×2, so you have that amount of time to go and proc Ember of Empyrean again. So because you need a very quick solar final blow, this is why I highly recommend pairing this build with a solar special weapon. That is why I'm using the empty vessel. Another good option for this would be the Jotun. Most things you shoot with the Jotun will die. However, another really good option, and it's something that I do not have yet, is the Mindbender's Ambition, and this is a really good option for 2 reasons. The first of which is because it has the brand new Pugilist perk. And for this build, the most important thing is getting back your Celestial Fire ability as quick as possible so that you can keep on proccing Sunbracers, obviously. So Pugilist restores some melee energy on final blows. And for those who don't know how Pugilist/Demolitionist really works, on primaries and on heavy weapons with Demolitionist and or Pugilist, you will refund 10% of your ability energy. However, on special weapons, it refunds 20% of the ability energy. So these kinds of perks like Pugilist and Demolitionist are more effective, twice as effective, on special weapons, and the Mindbender's ambition fits really well for this. And the second reason that Mindbender's is significant is because it has access to Incandescent to help Scorch Targets. And why is that important? Well, we are rocking Ember of Singeing as well as Ember of Searing. So defeating a Scorch Target will refund some class ability energy for our Phoenix Dive and refund some melee ability for our Celestial Fire. So that is really huge if we can Scorch more, and Incandescent helps with that. And I'm sure you already know this, but Heat Rises is kind of the backbone of a Sunbracers build. You have to have Heat Rises active because final blows while you're airborne are going to grant melee energy. So that is going to allow you to spam Celestial Fire back to back to back and keep on proccing Sunbracers infinitely as long as the encounter lasts. And the amount of melee energy you gain from getting airborne final blows is pretty significant. I don't know how much it is, so don't quote me on this, but it feels like around 20% as well. So jumping in the air and getting that final blow with the Pugilist Mindbenders, you're going to get a massive chunk of melee energy back. Pretty much just 2 final blows with Mindbenders while you jump is going to just fully give you your Celestial Fire back. And to help us get our Celestial Fire back even further, we are rocking double outreach on our class items. So when we activate our Phoenix Dive, we get a bunch of melee energy back. And then on top of that, we are running the Charge with Light mod called Heavy Handed. So when we're charged with light, we consume a stack of Charge with Light and regain half of our melee ability energy. So here's what happens. So you're charged with light throughout your Celestial Fire, and then you Phoenix Dive, and boom, just like that, we have almost all of our melee ability energy back. It's only going to take 1 airborne final blow to top it off. And note that it doesn't have to be an airborne final blow while Heat Rises is active. It can just be a jump shot. So if you see an ad, jump and shoot them with your Mindbenders, and boom, you got all of your melee ability energy back. So the way that we're becoming Charged with Light is going to be Elemental Charge. So when we pick up a well, it's going to give us 2 stacks of Charge with Light. And to make those wells, we are rocking 1 copy of Melee Wellmaker and 1 copy of Elemental Ordnance so that we get Elemental Wells on Grenade or Melee final blows, which is happening all the time with Sunbracers, obviously. And then for our last mod here, we of course are running Well of Life, which I mentioned earlier, to proc healing. But why do we need that healing when we're proccing the Ember of Empyrean and getting restoration ×2 forever? Well, you're not always going to be in a situation where you can get that short window of being able to Phoenix Dive on an enemy's head and proc that restoration and be able to keep it going. That's not always going to happen. So in that situation, you have to change the way that you play with this build. So that is where Well of Life comes into play. That's going to be our primary source of healing when we can't proc that Ember of Empyrean. And also the Phoenix Dive is going to be very important too, to give us some health back when we activate it. So that brings us to one of the most important parts of the build, and you're going to have a Void Affinity on your gloves for this because we're running a copy of Focusing Strike and a copy of Bolstering Detonation. So you get some class ability energy back whenever you cause damage with the melee or with the grenade. So everything you do with Sunbracers is going to help recharge your Phoenix Dive. So you're going to have to play a little bit more reserved this way. So what you're going to have to do to maximize your survivability is go ahead and do your Sunbracers thing, throw a melee out, throw some nades. You're going to make those wells with the melee Wellmaker and the Elemental Ordnance. But every time your Phoenix Dive becomes charged, use it. Dive back down to earth, grab that Well of Life to proc that healing, and repeat. Do your Sunbracers thing. As soon as Phoenix Dive charges, use it. Every time it's charged, use it. You gotta grab those wells and keep that healing going. Now for the stats of this build, you're going to want to aim for 100 recovery and 100 strength, and if you can, go with the 100 resilience as well, because it helps for survivability, obviously. Now you really do not need discipline investment. I have it anyways, but the Celestial Fire is the most important thing because that gives you infinite nades, so there's no reason to have grenade energy at that point. The only reason the discipline would come in handy is so that you can proc Heat Rises before you throw out your Celestial Fire and start the Sunbracers chain. But it isn't completely necessary. Resilience definitely matters more. And for a final fragment, we are running Ember of Ashes to apply more Scorch stacks to targets because damage, ignitions. However, if you wanted to, you could run Ember of Torches to make yourself radiant. That is really good as well for damage, but it just felt like these 4 fragments were far too important for this build that I just couldn't find a substitute for Ember of Torches. And finally, for the weapons of this build, it really doesn't matter. It's up to you, although I would recommend that if you're doing lower level content to use a solar special energy weapon. That is pretty important for proccing that Ember of Empyrean. However, if you're doing higher level content and you need champion mods, there is a lot of weapons in the game now that have intrinsic anti-champion mods, so you can just put on one of those, and if you need unstop, you can go on your helmet here and put on Inferno Whip, so you can stun unstoppable champions with your Celestial Fire. But if you have to deal with barriers and overloads together and no unstops are involved, then you could swap out Bolstering Detonation for whatever other champion mod you need here. Now, as for weapon choices, you know, we all love double special. I'm a speedrunner, I love going double special, but with this build, I would highly recommend having at least one primary weapon. And the reason for that is because sometimes you need to prime a target and get them weak so that you can make sure that your Celestial Fire kills them to start the chain going. And now for some honorable mention weapons, I gotta say Monte Carlo is a really good option. It gives you back your melee energy so quickly and so easily, and it's always been one of the staple weapons to pair with the Sunbracers build, and for a good reason. And nowadays we even have the Traveler's Chosen as well, which helps you get back all of your abilities, so that's another good option. And a lot of people would probably recommend you Skyburner's Oath, because when you're just floating in the air with heat rises and shooting the ground in hipfire mode, you're scorching targets really easily, and that's obviously really good for proccing Ember of Singeing and Ember of Searing. However, for me personally, it's just not really fun to use, and in higher level content, it does not slay out as hard as you need it to. And there's a few other good pugilist special weapons that I'd recommend trying, like there's the Malicious Birthright, there's the No Reprieve, which is craftable, and the Midas Reckoning, which is craftable, and both of these craftable weapons can get pugilist along with Wellspring. Having both of those enhanced will give you a ton of ability energy back on final blows. And for my heavy weapon of choice, I've been having a great time with the Roar of the Bear. It's great that it has huge blast radius and that it's solar, and auto-loading Demolitionist is a great roll, and Demolitionist is really good for burst damage because when you have Sunbracers proc, you can just shoot the launcher, throw a nade, which will auto-reload it with Demolitionist, shoot again, and you can shoot like 3 rockets back to back to back. It's really nice. And another really good heavy to use with this build would be the Parasite, because whenever using a heavy ad clear build, the Parasite is always a good nuke option because you're going to have the Worm's Hunger times 20 buff a lot of the time. And another great primary to use with this build would be the Crafted Zali's Bane, because in the first slot you can get Enhanced Pugilist, and the second slot you can get Enhanced Incandescent, and that is the role that we talked about earlier on the Mindbender's Ambition. So that is about it for the build. It is an absolute blast to use, no pun intended. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask in the comments down below. So I wouldn't say that this is the easiest build to use. It definitely is a learning curve and takes a little bit of practice, but eventually you'll get the idea down on how to sequence things and what to prioritize. Like for example, I will often try to spot a red bar enemy and keep him alive and throw my nades elsewhere so that when I run out of my infinite nades, I have that easy red bar target to use Celestial Fire on and keep the chain going. It's little things like that that you need to keep in mind with this build. And also remember that when you have heat rises active, to not fly too far high in the air, especially in higher level content, because you will be an easy target for every ad in the area to shoot at. But with heat rises, you can float relatively close to the ground, and in some situations you might need to do that. So there's these kinds of little tricks and things like that about this build that you'll learn as time goes by. So that is about it for the SUNBRACERS Perfected build. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button and leave a comment down below. Those 2 actions really help the algorithm and the video's performance. And if you are new and you enjoy Destiny 2 PvE and PvP weapon testing and builds, then you come to the right place because we do that a lot here, so consider dropping a sub. And now for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna let some more clips of this build play out. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next video.